Back live tonight, you're in Focus. Thanks for staying on. Johannesburg residents will have to pay more for services such as water and electricity after the finance MMC Dada Morero presented the city's budget earlier today. Morero announced a new 83.1 billion rands budget for the metro, which increased from the previous financial year at 80.9 billion rand. Well, he's joining me in the studio now for more on that conversation. MMC, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming in this evening. So, firstly, let's start with the fact that you were lamented even the last time that you were here, that when you left the city, there was at least a good, if not 3 billion, maybe 5 billion rand in cash that you were able to work with. But when you came back, that particular cash had been depleted. What is your situation right now?
No, well, thanks, Thabo, and good evening to your viewers. Look, you're correct. When we came in, what we had left in 2016 and subsequently in 2021 would have been depleted, which was true. But now what we're trying to do, as we always said, was to try and stabilize, try to get the financial position of the city to a better and healthy situation. Yeah. And since we came in February last year, we've been focusing on doing that. And we are so convinced that we are on the right track. Of course, there's still challenges there, and some are influenced as a result of those who might have lost their jobs, especially during the COVID. And I think we should accept that we're still being affected by the COVID period, and it will take time to get the economy running once more and get people into jobs, and they then in turn be able to afford and pay for their services. So we are on the right path.
You, however, are quite positive and optimistic about some 64 billion rand private sector investment that has come in, and we're looking at projects like your surgical hospital, which you're mentioning, Central Park development, the data center, the Barlow Park, and so on and so forth. How are these projects, directly impacting on a better service delivery trajectory for the city?
Well, remember, once we have such investments coming into our city, it means creation of jobs. It means Johannesburg remains a destination for investments. It means that we are growing our economy. It means we'll be increasing on our contribution on the national GDP. So it's an important aspect. And now the municipality has to play a particular role, one, availing of the land to the private sector, and also participating in bulk infrastructure to ensure that these developments do take place. So it's an important role that we're playing, especially in as far as infrastructure is concerned, to enable these investments to come to our city. We are attracting quite serious investments, both locally and internationally, who wants to come into Johannesburg. So we must continue to position Johannesburg as a place for an investment destination. So we can't compromise. But for us to achieve that, focus and investment into infrastructure becomes very critical.
How does it affect your bottom line? Does it make things any better? You've got big infrastructure challenges. We've got cables being stolen even under the N1, fires and so forth. You've got to replace. You've got that particular entity, City Power, owing billions to Eskom. They're in dispute in terms of whatever it is that they need to pay. You've got huge challenge of water infrastructure that is old, aging, and
yes, there are challenges, but of course there are also the positive side of investments, which means you are growing your city. You are creating an environment where your residents will have opportunities. Two, we do accept that we've had serious lawlessness problems, and that's why in our budget today, we threw some money into a bylaw enforcement, generally ensuring that we can focus on bylaw enforcement, which will help us to deal with lawlessness. But it also means we need to leverage and create partnerships with the South African Police Service, and where it's required, we'll also escalate some of the issues and partner with the South African National Defence Force, so that it helps us to deal with these things and protect infrastructure from vandalism, from criminals and those that are stealing our infrastructure. it's a big problem that we have, and a focus has been given into protection of the infrastructure. So we have those challenges, but there's also the positive sides, and we must try and ensure that the positives are more than the negatives in Johannesburg. So there is a trajectory that shows that we're in the right path, we're doing the things and doing them rightly. Of course, City Power and Eskom have entered into a dispute, and it's a dispute that we would announce today that would favor a mediation type of a situation so that we can resolve the impasse between the city and Eskom, which I think we will be able to get to a better solution without bringing in the courts. We'll have to invoke intergovernmental relations to try help us resolve these things, because these are two spheres of government who can really sit down around the table and resolve this matter. And the matter in question is the argument whether we owe Eskom and Eskom is owing the city, and that's where the problem is, because the city does claim that Eskom is owing us, and Eskom also doing a counterclaim that we owe them. So it's something that we can resolve. By the way, Thabo, it has happened in the past also. It's not the first time. Even in 2023, we had a situation where we argued with Eskom and Eskom accepted, and I think there were reversals, and we were then credited by Eskom amounting, I think it was about 1.8, and the second one was just under 200 million. So it does happen, and it just needs us to be mature about it between the city and Eskom and resolve this matter without having to go to courts.
Yeah. I mean, of course, the big issue now for people is the fact that rates are going up. I mean, part of it is the NERSA given increase to the electricity tariff, but other issues include the rates that you're paying for properties.
Yeah, the rates, property rates, what we have done in Johannesburg, you'd know that in 2023-2024 went at 2.5% increase in terms of our rates, when we had actually proposed a 5% increase. And through the consultation processes during the IDP, we went down to 2.5. And in this 2024-2025, we went into a consultation process at 4.8%, which then we revised it to 3.8, which is basically a 1% reduction. But what it means it will go a long way to help and cushion our residents, because they're already stressed, their money is stressed, so at least it will cushion them. And we still remain the lowest in any case, and it's an important point to put across that our rates and taxes here remains lower than all other metros in South Africa. And we also try to keep our tariff structure as low as possible. Unfortunately, in other instances like electricity, it's a pass-on cost from Eskom. As it comes, we just pass it to the customer. Unfortunately, we can't increase on it or reduce it. We can only pass the cost to the consumers. The same way with the rent water increases, it's a pass on. However, in this case in Johannesburg, we also had to bring some additional costs into the water tariffs, precisely because there are certain issues that we needed to address. One, our consumption of water is higher than what rent water is stipulated for the city. Our losses on water are quite high. So we need to regulate that space and start to take action to help us deal with our water infrastructure. So part of what we also do, we would want to save as we are creating a infrastructure fund focusing on water. So part of the money that we would be charging is to allow us to raise capital to be able to address our water infrastructure.
Having released some commercial square meterage as well, 236 meter squares for commercial use and some 13,500 dwelling units. I mean, if you look at the dwelling units, one might say that's not necessarily going to address your housing need and housing demand in the city. Well,
Johannesburg, as you know, we're a metropolitan city or an urban area. 60% of South Africa's population stays in the urban areas or moving into urban areas. So certainly housing in Johannesburg remains a challenge. The backlog will remain big, but there are two options that we're doing. One is what we are doing as government, which is RDP. You've got a second option called social housing, and of course the third one being a bonded housing schemes. So those schemes are there. Some are driven by private sector together with government to try and help us to intervene on the housing backlogs. But it's a big issue. And of course, we're working with provincial and national government. We're also working with the private sector to try our level best to break this backlog. But we are in Gauteng, we are in Johannesburg. We are at least on an annual basis or perhaps on a monthly basis, we are receiving just around 18,000 people on a monthly basis coming to settle to Johannesburg. Some who do not have even a plan where they're going to stay, they don't even have a job. All what they believe is that Johannesburg will present them with opportunities. So those are the challenges that we have. We may want to engage probably with National to rethink some of the division of revenue so that we can be able to support some of these things and the funding models of local government to help us to intervene on the housing market. But we think we are trying our level best, and hence the partnership with the private sector that is unlocking just over 13,000 units. Government itself, we are unlocking about 2,000 units in this financial year. So there is work that is being done to try and respond to the backlog.
So the people were promised in the hostels there in Soweto that when you make some announcement in this financial year, some allocation is going to be made for them to deal with those hostels and the challenges that they're facing. The
bigger challenge that we have, it's in the hostels in Soweto. It's Joburg, Merafi, and Mzimhlope Women's Hostel. And it's about addressing the sewer issue. So we are putting money to go and focus on dealing with the sewer issue. What has happened, there are developments, housing developments that were done in those hostels. But in fact, when they did the sewer, it was not properly done. And it resulted in sewer not being managed properly. Yeah. So we are now investing money to try and correct the sewer and bring the correct pipes, the correct size and all that, so that we don't have sewer issues. Then people can then be allocated into those houses and ease the current pressure on the hostel. Some of them are actually collapsing. Yes. So that is why we are intervening. In fact, we're quite happy that council supported it. And we hope tomorrow when we vote for the budget, they will support the allocation. I think we made an allocation of just around 146, 170 million, 184 million, so which is quite substantial to help us address immediately. And part of what we also want to address is the Madala Hostel and Helen Joseph Hostel in Alexander, to try and unlock some of the issues, especially Helen Joseph, which in our view has to be rebuilt because the structure is completely bad. It requires a complete renewal of the structure. So that is why we said we must rethink the hostels in our statement, and we are investing some money in this financial year.
Yeah. Are you rethinking or revisiting the rapid land release program?
Well, we do have one that we are doing in the southern farms, and the idea there is to create a service sites. And I think currently we're talking just under 2,000, just around 2,000 service sites that will be released in southern farms to allow people to go in their service site and they can build. For those that are able to, can build for themselves. But over and above that, southern farms in itself will be helping us with just over 24,000 housing units. But I must say up front, it's mixed use, where you'll have bonded, you'll have RDP flats, and social housing. So we are unlocking just over 24,000 units. Yeah. We launched Southern Farms in 2023, November, and processes to begin to start, the constructions are underway. We're hoping by end of this year, would be going on ground to start to build for southern farms. And it will unlock housing opportunities for people in the deep south, from El Rado Park right through to Orange Farm in Region G.
Looking at your split, I think you're saying about, is it 75% or 75.5% of it going to operational budget, and just the little bit that's left going into capital expenditure? What projects are you actually going to be focusing on, particularly when you look at the competing priorities? First one, of course, being the energy security, and the second one being water.
Well, those are the two major issues that we are looking at, and that is why we had allocated 1.2 billion for water and 1.2 billion for electricity. We are clear what we want to do, but we are also saying we'll not be able to do it alone. There's a need for us to create partnerships, and that is why we are creating partnerships with national institutions to help us to unlock this infrastructure. GovTech is one of them that we're engaging seriously to help us to deal with infrastructure, both for electricity and water. We can't do it alone. It requires huge, substantial amounts of money, and we need national government to also come into the picture.
So you're saying the 24 billion in the 3 years will be partly also national coming in and private sector coming in?
Well, currently what we announce is our own money, but it will also require us to engage with national for them to come to the party and help us deal with this thing. It's important basically because without proper water infrastructure, the risk is much higher, because then it means you may find yourself in a situation that the water that comes out is no longer conducive for human consumption. So it is important that we really, really focus and invest. It is also important to invest into electricity, but we are also looking at different models on electricity, which includes gas, includes solar. We are also looking at some innovative ideas around how do we ring-fence businesses in Johannesburg and create solar farms that will generally look after businesses as and when we've got load shedding or we've got other challenges of electricity. So we are investing quite heavily. We're also investing into informal settlements by creating what we call microgrids, which are solar propelled. We build a solar farm around there, and they get electricity from the sun. So those are some of the innovations that we are now bringing into the fold, and we are putting some money to support us to do so.
Completely out of time, but let's leave it there. Much appreciated, MMC. Thank you very much for coming in. Joburg, MMC for Finance there, Dada Morero. When we continue, we get reaction from the Free Market Foundation to the signing of the NHI bill into law, which is happening tomorrow. They'll speak to us in a moment. Stay with us.